Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday, 10:30 on the Eastern Seaboard, coming to you live on Rumble, rumble.com/amradpod. We come every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at this time slot. Glad to have you along with us, guys. If you haven't already, please smash the thumbs up and follow the channel. Seeing that Kyle Seraphin Show rated us here on Rumble. Grateful to have you guys along with us. Hopefully, we're going to keep the suspendable tempo up today, because today we're talking about picking a side. Today is decision day for so many people in the federal government. Are they going to opt in, opt out of the fork? We'll touch on that a little bit. Also, got to give Garrett the floor. He's going to get the con and going to drive us through the bloodletting that happened at the very end of last week in the lead up to this decision of whether or not federal workers should, in fact, resign and take the deferred resignation road, and actually detail who those characters were, who they're really great people, not so much, and also contrast that with the FBI agents who are currently suing the Department of Justice to hide their cowardice and finally want to get to real heroism from a Catholic public school teacher who is holding the line. She is a suspendable, and we definitely want to get to her. So all of that, so much more. Really glad that you're here with us on a Thursday. Really glad Garrett's here. At GOB Actual is his online profile. You find him on X, where apparently he's still shadow banned somewhat, but I'm grateful that I follow what Garrett says, because he is always putting some good information out, recently at least, about all of those FBI agents that were walked out because they have their great service for some reason or another. But before we get to all that, today's decision day, Garrett. I saw that recent reports are that of the 2.4 million federal workers not in uniform military service, 2.4 million.
That's a lot of people.
Roughly 20,000 had taken the fork and were going to resign. I mean, I think those probably were people who are going to retire anyway. There's always about like a 5 or 6% turnover. But today's decision day, I'm interested to see what number we get to. We're heading into the big game, the Super Bowl. If you had to do a prop bet on the percentage, how many folks do you think are going to take it?
Well, if it's at 1% right now, I would say another 0.5% by day's end.
To 30,000? 30,000? Maybe they'll all be 1811 criminal investigators.
I'd be good with that. I heard from one FBI personnel. I won't give away what type of employee they have, just to give them a little top cover, but they're going to take it. They're going to take the fork. And I said, you know what? Good for you. And this is someone who's kind of on the team. Not kind of, they are fully on the team. And I'm like, why you? And they're like, well, I'm getting kind of close. You know, why not? All I do is sit here. So I'm just going to take it and see what else is out there. And you know what? More power to you is what I say. But what I really want is the Marxist subversives to resign, but they won't. They're going to be embedded like a tick for as long as possible and try to get through the next 4 years, and hopefully in their satanic manipulated minds they think we're gonna come back bigger than ever, and maybe we'll even run Kamala Harris again and we're gonna win. I don't think they're gonna. It seems like the Democratic Party is just disintegrating before our very eyes. Which, hey, that's a great byproduct of what happened on November 5th.
Well, in the lead up to the Trump administration, I know there was a lot of promotions that went on within the FBI. I have to presume that sort of thing happened around the entire federal government.
Hmm.
They're all run by Marxists at this point. And I think that was recognized very early on. And this decision that a lot of people are going to have to make of whether or not they're going to opt in, opt out of the deferred resignation, there was a monkey wrench thrown into that at the end of last week. We've alluded to it, the bloodletting. And I guess that makes us a grifter by today's standards if we say it was a bloodletting, bloodbath, however you want to describe it. But a lot of senior executives got walked out. So that's in the back of your mind as you're assessing whether or not your job is essential when they just walked out like the fourth highest ranked person in the entire agency. That might be like, well, I do work in the mailroom. Maybe I'm not that important. Maybe I can be replaced, or AI can do my job, or maybe a volunteer who just really wants to be down for the cause, whatever it is. So that's the calculus that people have. And you did a really good job. And we talked about a bunch of these people before, but I think it's worth as a refresher, particularly since the American Radicals podcast has grown by leaps and bounds. We're
which
approaching
means which
five,
means like a dozen people.
5,000 followers, though. I'm really content with the upward trajectory. Definitely on the audio format, which I failed to recognize early on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. Make sure you subscribe there, and even if you watch us on Rumble, subscribe there anyway. Help us grow and expand there. But you put out a nice thread on some of these people, identified them. I think it's worth just a Cliff Notes Wave Tops version of each one of them. Garrett put this out on his social media at GOB Actual. It's just a screen capture of the one of the uh, emails or postings that were circulating, and a nice watermark with the suspendals behind it, so it's original to you, Garrett.
Oh
These
yeah.
are emails that executive management were very upset were getting out into the public because they're really big scared of you, Garrett. So who are these people? Describe their role and really what they did that would have gotten the acting deputy attorney general to say they need to go.
Yeah, time to go. And to touch on the bloodbath or the bloodletting, I think more than a bloodbath or a bloodletting, it's more of just some panic inducing change that has happened because nobody's blood has been let that we know of. Out of the people that were on that email, there's 8 of them. I think that first screenshot showed 4 or 5, and they all got their pension. They're all retiring. So to me, that's not bloodletting in the least. Maybe they didn't want to leave yet, but they came to some sort of agreement to walk out the door with their pension. I'm not sure of all the details, but that is not bloodletting to me, and that is it's even far better than they deserve, to be quite frank, because that first guy listed there is a guy named Timothy Dunham. It says HRBEAD. Oh man, the FBI, they love their letters, don't they? So that would be Human Resources Branch Executive Assistant Director, Tim Dunham. Now,
Fourth ranked in the bureau.
fourth
That
ranked.
there's 6 EADs, executive assistant directors. Human resources, arguably the most powerful, and we've talked about drunk Jenny. She left because she was probably going to get charged with the perjury for lying to weaponization. Maybe, I mean, who knows? But
Mhm.
Tim Dunham jumped in there and took over that role, and he's the signee on the revocations of a bunch of security clearances. I know.
Yep. So that's exactly what happened is he took over for drunk Jenny. So she was deposed on June 2nd of 2023, just a couple weeks after Steve and I testified and Marcus. And she lied in that testimony. And what I remember telling our lawyers at Empower, Tristan and Jason, I'm pretty sure she's the one who perjured herself. And then as more information came out and they ended up getting some SecD whistleblowers, they're like, she did. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's what I've been saying. And they're like, yeah, we actually do think she did. Because I that back then that is when I would say, why did she retire 2 days later? she claimed in that testimony that specific date had been selected for a long time. But fast forward about 3 weeks after she retired, Tim Dunham gets the promotion, and that's where he's been ever since, basically picking up where she left off. NSB EAD, Bobby Wells. NSB is the National Security Branch, Executive Assistant Director again. I need to do a little, I might have to do a follow-up thread because I only focused on like 3 or 4 of the people.
Jackie McGuire was in there. She's been
Jackie,
promoted 2 times. She's Jackie Two-Mag. She's the one who
yeah,
sent the team to go arrest Mark Houck, and then also killed a dog while she was walking her own little fluffy inside city limits of Philadelphia. She used her bureau-issued firearm to kill another dog and was cleared and promoted 2 times after that. There was also Ryan Young.
which I've heard the name Ryan Young. I'm not sure why I know it, but yeah.
And we've dug deep on Jeff Veltri, who was the special agent in charge of the Miami field office, and the fact that he had to purge his social media accounts of all the anti-Trump rhetoric, and how he, as his post at Security Division, went after military veterans and Christians and conservative-leaning people as likely whistleblowers, and he wanted to run them out. So, to me, the final thing I wanted to point out was the way that they closed this email out, because they name drop all these people bureau-wide, saying, "Hey, they all left." And this was a quote from the acting director, Brian Driscoll. "Each of these employees represent the highest caliber of public service, and this country is undoubtedly safer because of their work. We thank them for their unwavering commitment to our mission, the FBI family, and the American people. They will be missed." Gag.
Yes.
Just gag.
Yes.
Really sickens. But I think that demonstration, as it came out, and the timing of it, is going to play a role into who eventually decides whether or not they want to opt into the resignation or not. And then also the way that they just throw all of this praise and heap it onto these guys when they haven't done anything objectively good, because their positions, frankly, just don't allow it. I mean, they
Right.
can talk about how you sleep well at night because of my job at the Human Resources branch of the FBI.
I was just going to mention that.
But, but let's then contrast it with the agents who were identified as having participated in the January 6th investigations, which are now closed. And I think that there's an audit going on, and properly so. You're not a secret agent. Whatever you do is up for review at all times. That's why you have what are called file reviews.
Yeah.
And DOJ wanted to look into that. And there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth about the identities being turned over to the Department of Justice that wanted to look at the work you did. And so now we have FBI agents who have filed a lawsuit to keep their identities hidden, or keep their cowardice, or their the fact that they didn't consider their oath of office really a thing they had to be worried about, concerned about. It was just after all, an iPhone user agreement. You just check yes on it. You don't really read it or take it seriously at all. But to marry it to, let's walk out these executive assistant directors and high-ranking people in the FBI, and now we have this lawsuit that was filed in the District of Columbia. John and Jane Doe's. There's 9 agents who filed this lawsuit against the Department of Justice. And I do think it's very funny that their lawyer, who we'll get to in a second, messed up on the description of the agency, Garrett. For those who are listening, what agency do these Jane and John Doe's work for?
The Federal Bureau of Investigation. Investigation.
Typo. On who your clients are, it's not a plural in FBI. Who's this attorney is a activist. And for further information on that, we'll pull up what the oversight project at the Heritage Foundation found out about the attorney who filed this lawsuit. Her name is Pam Keith. And this is her series of social media postings that was a collage, we'll say. And she says, "We may have reasons to criticize Biden for various things, but I am not voting for Biden because I like Biden. I'm voting for Biden because I effing hate MAGA." That's just one of them. And, one of the other official acts she said was that she wanted the Department of Justice to arrest several members of the Supreme Court. Why am I bringing this up? Pick a side.
Because she's crazy.
She's crazy, and she doesn't do spell checks or actually look at what organization her clients are suing from. But picking a side, if you are a FBI agent who is just a by the book guy, you're going to use the Nuremberg defense. I was just following orders.
Hmm.
I was doing a lawful investigation, gathering the facts. I should not be held accountable. We can debate just following orders, whether or not you have a responsibility to take a step back and look at the entire mosaic of what's going on. But for our purposes of this, would you hire an activist communist attorney if you wanted to be just a by the book guy?
No, no, you would just find the best employment attorney that you could afford. You want hire somebody like this because she says there, I voted for Biden because I hate MAGA. That that should tell you all you need to know about how far off the deep end this person has gone. You know who I don't hate, Steve? Anybody. I don't hate people. I may have some dislike or disdain for certain things that people say or do or their beliefs, but I don't hate them. In fact, I want them to come to the truth. I know I'm not always the best with tact, but it I don't hate people just because they're different than me. And certainly in my line of work, when I had work, Steve, I didn't think, oh, this person, how are they different than me? How are they my enemy? Oh, this person's clearly a liberal or clearly pro Biden or clearly anti Christian. And so now I'm going to use my position to somehow harm them and fuel my hatred in through my employ. That that should just be, I don't know, man. To me it's mind blowing that people exist in that way where their sole existence is to try to punish their political, ideological, social and religious enemies. And
And that's why you would hire this particular attorney who I look at the social media screenings that she's doing these like really weird and angry, unhinged rants.
yeah.
And I'm actually more disturbed by the random punctuation and spacing. If I saw that and I didn't see Esquire and she wasn't actually hired as this attorney, I would think this is a crazy person. But I do think it's worth pointing out the one here. It's in very small font. I will read it verbatim. So my minders at the FBI Security Division. This is quote. Our FBI and DOJ allowed our Congress to be infiltrated and compromised by Russian assets spacebar, lowercase b, because the traitors are conservative white people and our law enforcement cannot see, spacebar, spacebar, small c, conservative white people as the threat to America, no matter how clearly and obviously they are. Oh, so she's a racist.
Yeah. Do you know what the date is on that? Can you see?
Yes, I can. It's at 7:14 a.m., April 14th, 2024. Maybe she just filed her taxes and she
2024.
was really angry
Oh,
at
maybe I got to send off some hatred because I just
within the
saw
last year. I
yeah.
mean,
That is really what's crazy is because doesn't everybody now know that Russiagate was a hoax, that Russian assets aren't they have not I'm sure they're trying, but Russian assets have not infiltrated the government at the top levels to the point of some type of underground Russian coup of America. I mean, I don't know how you get there and stay there, especially after the what's happened in the last decade. I, but hey, good luck with your lawsuit. And the other piece is how they're anonymous. And I want to say this lawsuit is already going to be heard to some degree in front of some Biden appointed judge today. I think it's happening today because
they
there
have to
were
expedite it, right? Because this list and the list of names was not actually given over. It was their employee ID numbers. I think that was basically what they settled on,
that's what
which
I was
you
told.
can just look up their name off of that. So it's not a big deal. But it actually is pretty good because they can say, look, we're looking at numbers. We can't have any sort of bias going into it. We can't say like, oh, that sounds like a white guy, so we're
Yeah.
going to do this, and that sounds like a Hispanic female, so we're going to do that. It's going to be pretty neutral. I think that's probably the best thing you could argue for. And there was a clarification issued about requesting these names, which I think is kind of fair. And this comes from the acting deputy attorney general. It says, quote, let me be clear, no FBI employee who simply followed orders and carried out their duties in an ethical manner with respect to January 6 investigations is at risk of termination or other penalties. The only individuals who should be concerned about the process initiated by my memo are those who acted with corrupt or partisan intent, who blatantly defied orders from the Department leadership, or who exercised discretion in weaponizing the FBI. Who is opposed to that?
Right. That is such a reasonable stance. When you could say 'cause that was Emil Bove who wrote that, correct? Just
Yes.
something up. So someone in Emil Bove's position, especially after what he's been through the last handful of years and what he knows and what he's seen, could very well say anyone who's connected to these cases that were corrupt in nature or somehow weaponized, you are going to have to walk the plank as well. And it's fresh in my mind because I went on friend of the Suspendables, Brianna Morello's show last night, and she played I think the full video is somewhere around 10 minutes, and it's of all these J6 arrests and SWAT raids and things of that nature. And the very first one is a Ring doorbell camera clip, and it's of Annette and Christopher Cuney's uh, suburban Kansas City home, which I was on, which you know this because we do a show together and we talk every day. But nearly a year ago now, it was late February last year when that Ring camera first was released, and I saw it, and I told Kyle about it and you about it, and Kyle had me on the show and we talked about it. I just talked to Annette last week for over an hour, and I mentioned this on Brianna's show because what we were briefed on, I think, was a lie, as I told her, because we were told that Chris was building illegal weapons in his basement. Well, it turns out he's got his FFL, and I don't remember exactly, but I want to say we were also told that. But then there was a caveat, but we believe he's building illegal weapons in his basement, and he could be a violent guy. And so that was the shtick they used to enlist SWAT's help on that case. Well, then you find out years later the truth of the case where they used the CHS, and it's from my view right now, I think it was a weaponized case by the case agent who didn't share the correct information with other aspects of the FBI office who would assist on the case. Because how would we know? And so this take by Emil Bove is very gracious and very fair, but also, of course, why would they come in after in part running on we're not going backwards, we're going forwards? You had Pam Bondi and Cash Patel both testify to that degree. So, but now you're going to come in and you're just going to not do the things you said you're going to do. Certainly there needs to be some accountability with some of these cases. But, and as I've been telling people in the FBI for the last week, roughly, I believe it's going to be the worst actors who are looked at and who are their cases are gone through to see how they weaponize their position, because that is what cannot stand in America, in American law enforcement, especially. You cannot weaponize that role against the populace, but it happened.
The way that they view their role in the FBI as a secret agent, like they're doing things that are beyond any sort of review or audit or reproach because they just have the utmost integrity after all. How dare you question what I'm doing and the manner in which I'm doing it? I'm Colonel Jessup. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. Hubris that is unchecked has led to the absolute weaponization of the agency. And the hubris unchecked is completely unchecked because they're hiring a activist communist to represent them. And the last thing before we move off this is the hubris is unchecked because they're fundraising and they're developing camaraderie around the fact that they're all bleep holes. And that is because the suspendables are everywhere.
Yeah.
They are selling challenge coins. For those listening, it's a nice challenge coin. It's very prominent within the military law enforcement space. It's a giant bald eagle with an American flag behind it. Don't tread on me, a copy of the Constitution, but it says in the perimeter, I was on the J6 shit list. So they're proud of what they're doing. They're proud of what they've done. And they're not going to learn any sort of lesson from this. They're just hoping to elude it. And I think that the fact that they're bringing this lawsuit forward means that they're probably not going to be, Garrett, joining the fork and saying that I'm going to move on to greener pastures, right?
Yeah. So one thing with this coin, one, you used to get coins for pretty serious matters, at least in the military, that's how I always understood it. Like, if you
They're
got
way, way too prolific now.
yeah, they've tarnished the point, and somebody's already creating a coin like this and shelling it out. This is, if you're selling this coin, you were one of the tables in the temple that Jesus was flipping. Okay, that's plain and simple. And I like to, and I'm sure that because that's just a rendering of it. But did you notice how it says "Don't tread in me" instead of "Don't tread"? What are y'all, a bunch of queers? I mean, uh, I don't understand it. And hey, if you are, what is it from Seinfeld?
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's
There's
nothing wrong with
not that there's anything wrong with
yeah,
that.
but also that the we the people over there on the left. So you got the Constitution on there. When not that long ago, Christopher Wray was testifying about the domestic violent extremism symbols guide that had things like 2A. Where does that come from? That comes from the Constitution. Well, here
Did
they got
they get this challenge coin made in the Chinese with "Don't tread in me," or is it made by the same people that crafted a lawsuit where they don't know the name of their agency is Federal Bureau of
oh
Investigation,
man, this is a
not Federal Bureau?
50-50.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Good catch by you. I did not even see that.
I
All
don't
right,
think
that's
most people,
enough. It's
but
enough FBI.
one more piece, one more piece.
All right.
I
I'll
meant to
indulge.
say this earlier. Jeff Feltry. My favorite thing about Jeff Feltry, one of the guys who got his retirement, is before he was allowed to take his seat at the head of the Miami division, he was at SecD, the security division, where he was weaponizing security clearances, and he was under investigation for retaliation against whistleblowers for at least a few months, but they left him in his position where he continued to retaliate against whistleblowers like me and like you and like Marcus. And then they said, you know what? We don't really care. We're going to send you off to Miami. And then you did mention his social media posts, and then off he went. So these people are getting far better than they deserve. And then also with the secret agents, have you ever kept your name secret, Steve? Is your name the real Steve Friend on social media, or is it the secret Steve Friend? I know the answer. And in fact, your name was leaked to the media. So I don't know. I kind of say, cry me a river, go clutch more pearls, and you shouldn't have your names masked for any reason. And they cite safety. Okay. Do you think me, you, Kyle, do you think Marcus, do you think there's any safety concerns there? I know I've been concerned about safety most of my adult life, but our names are out there. If people want to find us, they could find us. And okay, that's part of what happens when you live in America. You don't you're especially as an FBI agent or FBI employee, you don't have an expectation of privacy to your name. When you showed up on any type of uh knock and talk or interview or whatever, did you ever say, "Well, I can't tell you my name because I'm an FBI agent"? No. That's not how this works. And so I don't know. It really gets me fired up actually because of the polarity in differences compared to how people like us have been treated, or even with this questionnaire. When Joe Biden illegally mandated the COVID vaccine, we were answering questionnaires like this, and that had to do with our religious beliefs and things of that nature that are actually constitutionally protected and not something to do with my work.
Did you put your name on that, Garrett?
Of course. Of course I put my name on that. Oh, and then I even put my name on the lawsuit because Kyle and I and a bunch of other federal employees all were enjoined in a lawsuit, and they asked us, "Do you want to put your name on it?" And I responded, I was like, "Absolutely." You should want to stand behind things of this nature. If you have a legitimate purpose to do it, you should loudly and proudly say it. Yes, I'm Garrett O'Boyle and I'm on this lawsuit. Come get me, bro.
One of the crux of one of my disclosures was me saying my name is on these cases and they
Yeah,
need to be buttoned up.
right.
That's really what it boils down to. I'm not comfortable with that, the way that they're going forward. So I want to contrast the character of those sorts of people that are really concerned about concealing their cowardice or saying that they represent only the best of us and you sleep well at night because of the work that they're doing within the science and technology branch of the FBI or what have you, with someone who is actually a courageous individual, someone who is a stalwart for not just First Amendment, but for religious worship. And this woman whose name is Marisol Arroyo Castro. Her story, her trials and tribulations, Garrett. We I really want to reach out and see if we can get in touch with this woman. who is a veteran teacher in Connecticut public schools for 32 years.
That's a long time.
For the last 10 years, while teaching at the New Britain School District, she's placed a crucifix by her desk with other personal items, such as student artwork and a church calendar. As a devout Catholic, the crucifix reminds her to pray and helps her to remain calm throughout the day. But in early December 2024, just a couple months ago, Marisol was brought into a meeting with the vice principal and abruptly told that unless she removed the crucifix by her desk by 8 a.m. the following Monday morning, she would be charged with insubordination.
No, no. Oh man, this wow.
Oh, it gets
Wow.
better, my friend. She met with the principal, that she took it up further. She went with the principal, the vice principal, the chief of staff, and a union representative. The principal told her the cross was just an idol. To her, as a Catholic, that was offensive. The chief of staff suggested she put the crucifix in a drawer, but Marisol explained that she would feel bad, like she was putting Jesus in a drawer. The union rep suggested a compromise. This is one of these guys that just wants to find a place where you can succeed and we can succeed and we can all succeed, and move the crucifix to a place where the students wouldn't see it. The group went to her classroom, told her to move the crucifix under her desk. After she did so, Marisol started to sob, feeling as though she hid it under a bushel.
Mm.
The next day, she returned the crucifix to its original location. Push pause on her story, Garrett. What are your feelings of a individual within an executive management of the school, like the principal, saying that your religious symbol is an idol?
That sounds to me like it could be a Title VII violation, to be honest. Because, dude, this is wild. Because what about the LGBTQ flag that the teacher next door has hanging on the door? That's okay, but the crucifix is not. Or I don't know what other type of symbols people might have. I don't know. Muslims, maybe they have a crescent moon symbol that they prominently display,
What, a
or
Star of David?
Buddhists have a little Buddha statue. So are you going to do the same thing there? We know the answer, because when you look at these stories, it's always the Christian or Christian adjacent type of people who are who are getting attacked for their First Amendment belief, and that's just the thing. Because people would say, well, separation of church and state. She works for the government. She works in the public school. That does not mean that she has to give up her personal religious beliefs. That does not mean that she has to hide the cross that has been displayed in the same spot for the last 10 years. Doesn't mean that she suddenly has to hide it. Even if somebody complained about it, it doesn't mean that. I had a cross on my desk. It was actually behind me up on my file cabinet when I was at the FBI, and it had a Bible verse written on it. Nobody ever said anything. You can have those type of things in the workplace.
How about if somebody just has a crucifix necklace, right? Is it a dress code problem? Or how many times did you get an email from someone in government service from a .gov email address that had a Bible verse in the signature
Yeah.
line of that?
Yep. Often enough, for sure. Our training, what was he? I forget what his title was, but he was something to do with our training. He had a Bible verse at the end of his email, and I remember when I first got to the division, I got an email from him about some type of new agent training that I had to do for my logbook, and I responded just to say, "Hey, thanks. I appreciate that you have that Bible verse in your email too." And that's you can do that type of thing. That's because you still have a First Amendment.
So back to Marisol Arroyo Castro. So she said she didn't want to put Jesus under a bushel, and returned it. The next day, Marisol received a letter of reprimand explaining that her actions were insubordinate. The principal visited her classroom and told her that she should remove the crucifix to properly, quote, live out her faith, and exhorted her to give Caesar what it's Caesar's, unquote. When she responded that she could not, in good conscience, remove the crucifix, she was then suspended without pay for 2 days. The school hoped that she would realize, they hoped that they just, smacked her enough that she would just bend the knee. And it was in her best interest to comply and hang the crucifix under her desk in a place the school administration called her private space, a safe space. Now she's on administrative leave during the entire process, indefinitely suspended administrative leave. How about trying to manipulates the principles and convictions of someone's faith to have them do something that's diametrically opposed to what their
Yeah.
faith is. I think there's a commandment against that. It's like, don't take the Lord's name in Maine. Oh, no, this is in Connecticut. Vain, right? Am I right on that? Is that something that maybe a Catholic could construe as a mortal sin?
Yeah, for sure. What really aggravates me here, this is how Satan would speak. Because Satan
Oh,
knows the
yeah.
Bible very well. So he would come at you and say, well, just think of when Jesus was tempted after his fast. Satan was using biblical principles from the Old Testament, as we know it today, to try to get Jesus to comply with his will, and then therefore to prove that Jesus was not the Christ. And so Jesus is responding with his own biblical uh you know dictates to thwart Satan. And this is the same here. You've got this administrator saying, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So one, you're twisting God's word. Two, you probably don't understand the faith at all. And three, you're using it just to try to get your way. When you say render unto Caesar,
It has nothing to do with just obey the
right,
government. It has
right.
to do with like taxes.
Yes, it has to do with taxes. So Jesus is saying, I don't care that Caesar's mug is on the coin. You can give to Caesar because he's taxing you, and you can give to God through a tithe or whatever. Or it's there's a lot more to it than that. And because they were trying to catch him, they were trying to get a reason for them to further pursue Jesus. And
Right.
he answered them, and they couldn't really respond. But to use that in this way is it's utterly reprehensible. And so she's still, well, this was just December, so she's still on the suspension while they look into this, huh?
Yep, she still is. That comes from firstliberty.org. You can learn about how they're defending her in this. And it's tough to see, but like there's a photo of how the crucifix was displayed. It's not anything that, well, you would think would offend anyone who's even the most delicate sensibilities, because I don't know. If they don't believe in it, how does it hurt them?
Right. They
But
don't.
it's not freedom from religion. The religion is anti anything, any
Hmm.
anti religion entirely. Let's get to the story now, as we're choosing our sides of this political story, because I know a lot of people are going to talk about how Politico has been getting all this government money. I want to touch on it briefly, but then I spin off something else, as an example, which I think is important that we can get to. So the story that's been breaking recently, particularly in light of the USAID scrutiny by the Doge, as it's been going on. And it was revealed yesterday, and there was a big, giant viral moment online about how USAID was subsidizing Politico, which is a news source, leftist, very important to people in Washington, D.C., not a whole lot of people outside of that. Now, they overestimated, or the actual figure that USAID was providing, but the bottom line number was accurate. $8.2 million in US government funds went to Politico. So political leadership denied this. This comes from their CEO and also their editor in chief. You want to talk about being satanic in your language, manipulating what you say. I'm going to say the exact thing that I'm guilty of, and then tell you that I'm not guilty of it. All right. Political leadership denied it was the beneficiary of a government program after the revelations of taxpayer funds being used to pay for its subscription service went viral. The CEO and the editor in chief stressed Politico, quote, has never been a beneficiary of government programs or subsidies, not 1 cent ever in 18 years, unquote. And then touted that its subscription service provides both private and public sector clients with granular fact-based reporting, real-time intelligence, and tracking tools across key policy areas. So we don't benefit, Garrett, from anything from the taxpayers. The government doesn't give us anything, but our service that we provide for a cost gives them valuable information.
Okay, political. You're lying like usual. I I want to say I heard it was they were receiving 37 times more than
There was some calculations going on, but this was from Fox. It was earlier today. I think it's more updated, and
okay.
it said that it was more widespread. It wasn't just USAID. The facts they gave from the various government agencies, a couple of them. There was, let's see, Department of Health and Human Services, $1.3 million.
Dang.
Department of Interior, $1.3 million. I guess to manage the Indian reservations, they got to read Politico. The Department of Energy, $1.3 million. Department of Agriculture, 500,000. Department of Commerce, a little under 500,000. Now, what I wanted to bring up was just an idea of how the news media could be wholly subsidized by the US government at this point. We railed against NPR and PBS, which are actually supposed to be government subsidized media and should go away, should go the way of the dodo bird. But I did just like rough numbers thinking about our former employer, the FBI, 55 field offices. They have roughly 350 resident agencies, which are like the satellite offices. So if you combine those, that adds up to just about 400 offices. Okay. And how theoretically, let's say, look, we need to stay up to date on the news. So we're going to make sure that the New York Times gets delivered every single day to one of our 400 offices. $30 a month per subscription. That is $144,000 for the FBI to give a New York Times Monday through Friday edition to its offices around the country. And it says nothing about the inflation that could have gone on where they pay 10x whatever the cost is of it. But that's one agency within one branch of government for one newspaper. And now you start to see how, wouldn't you know it, Politico couldn't make payroll yesterday.
Yeah. That's the kicker for me too is not okay. So they're coming out denying that they're getting any benefit from this, or it's a service. Well, and now you can't pay your payroll. So the government, aka you, if you pay taxes, if you're rendering unto Caesar, what is Caesar's? You were paying Politico's payroll. It just makes me think of all of the different subscriptions too, because you talked about New York Times and FBI field offices. We were getting the local newspaper, the Wichita Eagle, where I was in the FBI in Wichita, and then we were getting the New York Times as well. And there was always a little stack in the morning of newspapers outside the front door. And shame on me, I never gave it much thought. Every morning I saw those, I should have thought that is government fraud, waste, and abuse. Because one, when you're at work, aren't you supposed to be working? So what are you doing reading the newspaper? And there were a handful of guys who would every day they would read the newspaper and then they'd trade with the other guys who enjoyed reading the newspaper. And that's not what you're here for. You're not here to read the newspaper. You're here to work. You're here to do whatever it is FBI work is, because apparently there's not enough of it because you have time to read the newspaper every day. But also, it makes me think I wasn't spending my personal money. I wasn't spending my paycheck on the New York Times. And believe me, there's been enough times where I click on a New York Times link and I know they're a filthy liberal rag, but sometimes I still want to see what they have to say. And then it gets paywalled. And I think, well, as much as I would like to have access to New York Times, it's not worth the cost.
Oh, I got the workaround for you, Garrett. I'll get it with you offline. I'll tell you how to do that. And it's sort of they construe it with consumption of the news being, there could be a mass casualty event we have to be aware of. I don't think the New York Times does their hard print edition in real time.
Right.
It will be reflecting on what happened the prior day.
Yeah.
And you get into the same sort of thing with the way that their TVs are on every day on the news, and the debates that go on what channel is allowed to be on all the time. It's always got to be CNN from the analysts because they'll complain if somebody puts on a Fox News, which is hardly right-wing source it's perceived to be, and that's why our office in Daytona they put on Newsmax just to make the analysts really angry. Let's talk about guys who are maybe picking their side in anticipation of this new Trump administration, because it started a couple months ago, and we have been talking about since this podcast has been on how military recruiting is down, and you could speak to that really well with your own experience. Army numbers are up. You rock the green there, Garrett.
Yeah.
Army recruiting shatters records
That's crazy.
after the Trump election win. U.S. Army recently announced it shattered previous recruiting records, with December 2024 being the most productive December in 15 years. Now, the numbers might be so bad that 15 years, I mean, maybe they got, well, we went from 4 recruits to 8. It's 100% improvement, right? But the branch reported it enlisted nearly 350 soldiers every day of the month. So pretty big numbers. You signed the dotted line, Garrett. Do you think that people are making a political calculus? Are they picking their side, or because they want to wear a uniform for a particular president, or are they maybe perceiving that the mission set is going to change to actually defending the country and not being a social
I,
experiment
I wonder
agency?
because part of me would be hesitant still to just sign on the dotted line because Donald Trump's in and now things are going to change because I think what we've seen in the last probably couple decades, and it's gotten really bad now, is at the flag officer level, and it starts at your butter bar. You got these fresh guys and girls coming out of college, getting into the officer corps, and the ones that stick around and then promote all the way up. It's very problematic now. They are the cultural Marxists that we know of and saw at the FBI, and they are part of the deep state or whatever verbiage you want to use, but it's real and it's there. And by and large, enlisted people aren't that. They're maybe if they're graduating high school, they're barely doing it, and then they're like, okay, what should I do now? And many of those type of people used to sign on the dotted line and then go serve a tremendous career oftentimes and stick it out for the whole thing. So I don't know. I'm a little worried that some people are jumping the gun here. I'm also happy to see it because we need a strong military. And if you don't have a strong military, you don't have a strong nation. I think the strength of one's military is a direct reflection of the strength of the nation as a whole. So in a way, I'm grateful for it, but I'm also worried that some of the Marxist policies and procedures that were left by a guy like Lloyd Austin and everybody under him is still going to be rather prevalent. And then those people are going to use their positions, just like the principal at the school is going to use their position in a weaponized fashion against people beneath them who just who stand up for the truth or stand up for what they believe or say, hey, maybe this is actually illegal what you're trying to do. DOD got hit hard with the vaccine mandate, and a lot of people resisted, and a lot of people are the worse off for it. A lot of the people who were implementing those illegal procedures and policies are still there, and they're not getting punished. So I don't know. I'm kind of split on this one.
Is it illegal for a private organization in the employment sector, like a PricewaterhouseCooper, to ban particular racial groups from a career advancement seminar?
Certainly.
Reporting from Daily Wire. The program at PricewaterhouseCooper, which is an accounting firm, one of the big 4, program called the Career Preview, is a 3-day experience set to take place this summer in Orlando. They're taking them to Disney World. It imposes race-based selection criteria on the applicants. Selected candidates will have the cost of their travel and accommodations covered by PricewaterhouseCooper. The eligibility guidelines and applications state that applicants must be Black or Hispanic, and asks, quote, do you self-identify as a member of a traditionally underrepresented group in the professional services industry? It's a mandatory question. Now, here's where it comes down to there could be the force of law involved here with PricewaterhouseCooper. They're a government contractor. So making that it's subject to the executive order saying that DEI in government is gone. But to do this like so openly and blatantly at a fairly prominent firm, I think it's very much like the FBI agents who were filing a lawsuit and hiring a communist to represent them here, saying like, nope, I'm going to stand the ground here, like Costco elevating DEI, which I did get a kick out of how Al Sharpton did a boycott of Costco, where he marched in hundreds of people into a Costco saying, buy Costco, and then they all walked out without buying anything. But the battle lines are drawn. The ideological battle lines are drawn. And that extends not just to the DEI hiring, or are you going to actually uphold your oath of office, but to the type of food that you're expected to eat, which this is gross. And maybe not kosher. I'll have to get up on my my Levitical reading on this one, but in the European Union, they are going to allow mealworms in
Sick.
food products. Maybe they just don't have very good standards, and they just were like, "Well, we'll just whatever we got, we're going with, right?" And the people are saying, "Well, it's extra protein." In jest, of course, they're not serious about it, or are they?
Yeah.
So this comes from soapcentral.com EU to allow mealworms. The European Union has officially approved the use of up to 4% UV treated mealworm powder in food products like bread, cheese, and pasta. Despite the chaos online, mealworms, and this is a great from this news source. These guys, I mean, I guess Politico will have a nice place to land since they can't make payroll. Maybe they should go to soapcentral.com. Quote, despite the chaos online, mealworms are a sustainable protein source, and their use in food could be a step towards more eco-friendly eating.
Hmm.
I think they're anti-Semitic.
I want to know where this stemmed from and why suddenly the EU says, "All right, we're going to allow a certain amount of mealworms into our food products." I got to think that somewhere along the line they realized that their standards suck or their conditions suck collectively enough where they're coming to this conclusion of we've got to make it legal because too many mealworms are getting through. But gross. And I don't. Maybe we should look into how many mealworms are allowed to be in our food, because maybe it's one of those things that I was just a little more ignorant to.
Well, you
Because
need a government agency to tell you how many rat droppings are
ugh,
permissible.
yeah, where's what's his name? Dang it, it was right there and then fleeted. Sinclair,
Upton
Upton
Sinclair
Sinclair.
from the
Yes.
jungle. Completely fictional,
Uh
by the
huh.
way. Not a true story,
Well,
but definitely shaped the American landscape as it came to
y-
food protection.
yeah, he could be a writer for New York Times or Politico today. But yeah, that it kind of grosses me out. But then I think back to my times in Iraq or Afghanistan, or probably even at a family picnic where I dropped a burger on the ground and I picked it up and thought, good, this is whatever, I'm still gonna eat it, um, because it's I'm sure humans have ingested mealworms for most of our existence. So maybe it's really not that big a deal. I don't know. But the headline, the idea of it, I saw a picture of the same story and it had pictures of mealworms by some bread, I think, if I remember right. And it's gross, grosses me out.
I'm back to they want us to eat the bugs, Garrett. That's basically where I'm at
This
on
is,
this because this is a government agency that's saying, well, that's an acceptable, and we're going to do treatments. We're going to do these UV ultraviolet rays that'll make sure that the mealworms are at an acceptable level of sliminess or however they are. But they've been saying, if the World Economic Forum and all these globalist organizations, that the roadmap to sustainability is for humans to have to eat the bugs. And my question is, are the people who work at those government agencies, are they going to be the ones to eat the bugs?
mm,
Or are the people who worked at the government agencies and then opted in to the fork and gave up their government jobs? And of course, they live hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, so they'll be good through September. But then after that, are they going to be doing some sort of egg heist, which is the final story of the day, Garrett? All right, this one was just fun. I saw this and thought we got to talk about this. 100,000 eggs were stolen from a trailer in Pennsylvania. Okay. Uh, this comes from CNN. The theft of approximately 100,000 eggs from the back of a distribution trailer in central Pennsylvania is under investigation, authorities say, as the grocery staple has become scarce in areas due to the avian flu outbreak and prices are reaching near record highs. The eggs are worth estimated $40,000.
that's a lot of money in eggs.
That's 40 cents an egg. Wait. That means that our average price of eggs is really high. The average price of a dozen large eggs, according to this article, grade A eggs, was $4.15 in December, up from $3.65, a 50-cent increase. That, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, egg prices also up more than 36% year over year in December.
I love my eggs, Steve. It's like its own food group for me over here.
Oh yeah.
And when I see that $40,000 worth of eggs were stolen, I kind of think, one, how'd you do it? How'd you pull off this immaculate egg heist? Two, was it planned? There had to have been some planning, or maybe not. Maybe you just hopped into the driver's seat of the truck and took off. I don't know. But now you got this surplus of eggs.
You got a black market for eggs out there. Where are you gonna off them all?
Yes, what are you going to do with them? Because unless you have, unless you are a farm owner who has one of those signs that says fresh eggs, I don't know what you're going to do. Or you have a friend who you can trust enough who has that farm where you can take them and then slash prices for a couple days just to move the eggs. But also then you're going to have to change your marketing, because these aren't farm fresh eggs at this point. These are most likely the
Slave
white,
labor eggs.
yes, the white shelled egg that you're getting in at Walmart. So
These eggs probably have 4% mealworms in them, right?
most likely. I do. Oh, and then wasn't there recently the great egg recall of 2024, or maybe it was even into 2025 because of bird flu? So I don't know. I feel for the eggs, because I want some scrambled eggs right now, or fried, or sunny side up. Any of those I'll take.
They
So
can just scramble them up and donate them to the government workers who are going to need them, because by September, maybe they'll be in need of a protein source other than a worm. All right, Garrett, I have a palate cleanse, but want to get your thoughts here on the day where we're picking our sides between good and evil, cowards and courageous.
yes, sir. I'm thinking of our teacher with her crucifix and her willingness to say, no, I'm not going to let you bully me. I almost did. I took the bait for a day and I hid it under a bushel under my desk in my quote private space, but I'm not going to do it because I know it's wrong, and I'm going to resist your evil ploys to try to suppress my faith. And so we're going to Romans 12, just the first two verses. I mean, Romans, there's so much to unpack in Romans, but verse verse 1, it says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And as she did, she discerned that the will of God was not to hide the cross under the bushel. And that's the thing, is these truths are absolute, and we have a roadmap to how we can follow them, and it's right here in God's word. And it I don't know, there's just always so much to unpack. You mentioned Leviticus earlier. From front to back, Steve, there's just so much in there, but packed with some divine truth. So that's what I've got for today.
Well, in the spirit of our teacher, I think that I'm going to bring up a favorite of ours. We've had multiple times, a Nate Bargatze clip about going to parent day at school, career day at school, and his interactions with the students there about what education is required. He probably could have benefited from a teacher like the good Catholic woman that we talked about before.
I went to career day for my daughter's school, and I get what I do is very fun, but I was nervous because I'm there with real people and they're smart, and so I was hoping to sit at a table alone. They put me at a table with a surgeon, which I think they did it on purpose, almost to show the kids, here's the difference between reading. So the kids come up, and they're like, what subjects do you use for comedy? And I don't even know what the subjects they're taking. I was like, I do English. I do mostly English on stage. They asked him, how long do you go to school to be a surgeon? You know, and he's like 54 years or whatever. It's like and they asked me, they're like, how long to be a comedian? I was like, you're good now. So
It is true. I guess you don't need advanced education, but you do need to connect the dots really well, as we try to do every single time in the American Radicals podcast, guys. So that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you, as always, for joining us along here on rumble.com/amradpod. Back with you Saturday, 10:30. Hope to see you then. Until then, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.